Avengers Endgame, starring practically every A-lister out there, is not really a standalone film. It's more or less the greatest hits of the MCU all combined into one 3 hour and some change movie that really just drags along and is like Martin Scorsese says, a theme park ride. Endgame opens shortly after the events of Infinity Wars. I just got around to seeing this when it popped up on, I think, Amazon Prime, something like that. And it was one of those films I'm not the biggest MCU fan, but I said, hey, it's free, might as well watch it. So it opens up a little bit after Infinity Wars, 23 days or so, when Tony Stark and Nebula are rescued by Captain Marvel, taken back to Earth, where they join up with what remains of the Avengers, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, and Rocket, the little raccoon-ish thing. And from there, they go find Thanos, end up learning that the Infinity Stones have been destroyed. So Thor gets pissed, cuts Thanos' arm and hand off before they say, well, shit, we're screwed. We can't do anything with this. Well, then it flashes forward like 5 years, and all the people that disappeared with the snap are gone, and the world is pretty much kind of decimated. Whatever heroes are left are just kind of hiding in the wings and the shadows. Hawkeye is one of the ones that's kind of taken a new leaf in life as just a merciless, cold-hearted vigilante going around killing every crime gang he can, from Mexican cartels all the way to the Yakuza triads. Probably everything he can get his hands on, he's going after. Well, once Scott Lang pops back up to life 5 years later from coming out of the quantum realm, he then goes and meets up with the other Avengers there, and they go find Tony Stark, try to talk to him, and say, hey, looks like we can use the quantum realm to travel back in time and then use the stones from the past, bring them into the future, create a new Infinity Gauntlet, and then be able to bring everybody back. Well, this is complicated a little bit. It's one of those out there kind of things. The whole concept of timelines and stuff is discussed in the film with a few pop culture jokes in terms of Scott Lang, Paul Rudd's character, saying that Back to the Future was bullshit. So really this movie just kind of makes it up on it as it goes along in terms of whatever the rules of the world are, in terms of the multiverse, the varying timelines, and how one can go into the past, change something, create an alternative timeline, and then have a new future, so to speak. Well, the Avengers then take off. They all go back into time to pick up the various stones in different time periods before Thanos will be able to get them. So they go and collect all these, bring them together, but while in the past, Nebula and Rhodey go to the past and take the Power Stone before Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Chris Pratt can steal it. And then at that point, the Nebula, because she has all the cyborg enhancements, ends up connecting with herself in that timeline, and that alerts Thanos of what's going on. So from that point, you kind of have a doomsday clock ticking, so to speak, where Thanos knows what's happened. He knows he succeeded, and as part of his success, he realizes that they're going to revert it, and he has to figure out a way to stop them. So he wants to, at this point, just destroy the whole universe and rebuild it in his own image. Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't really say. But his motivations are here and now, gone from this semi-altruistic version of wanting to save half of the universe while wiping out the other half, because resources are finite and you can't have just this explosion of population, various things, because it's going to lead to the wars and fighting that is going on and perceived through Thanos' eyes. But this movie, they take that motivation away from him, and he just becomes a cold-hearted murderer that says, I'm going to kill everybody. Well, once they're pulled back into the actual timeline, they get old. Professor Hulk, at this point, Bruce Banner, has made peace with the Hulk version of himself and ends up kind of merging the two personalities together. Well, snaps his fingers, brings everybody back to life, but the Nebula from the past was actually taking the place of the Nebula in the present, and she ends up flipping on the time machine, allowing Thanos and his warship to come flying through, destroying the Avengers compound in turn. From this point, I think it's like an hour left in the film, and from there on, it is just pretty much one big battle, and most of it being in CGI. You can tell it's a lot of green screen, and you have the cool little fight scene between Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, all beating up Thanos, and for some reason, even though Thor was pretty much on par with Thanos in Infinity Wars, he's now, because he's a drunk and fat, he doesn't have the ability to fight him toe to toe. So it does take 3 Avengers to kind of fight him and beat him down. But he still ends up winning, knocking them out, and Captain Marvel has to come in and save it. Brie Larson's role in this film is very limited. It almost appears to be an afterthought as a way to tie up plot holes with, Tony Stark's out in space. How do we get him back to Earth? Boom, we bring in Captain Marvel. She's going to take care of us. It just didn't really jive too much with me. I thought it was more of convenience than actually good writing, because the Captain Marvel film came out a couple months before Endgame, and it seemed to be one that they just wanted to pull her into it as well to get as many A-listers as possible in this film. So the big battle starts going on, and it's one of those ones that's kind of muddled because there is so many characters. There's like 10 Avengers at this point, and they all come back. The Sorcerers, Doctor Strange, and the rest of them open up portals, bringing Black Panther and the armies of Wakanda, along with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and pretty much anybody that's out there that wants to fight Thanos gets to show up to this battle. Like I said, it's more of kind of the best hits of the MCU, because it does, when they go into past, they relive events from some of the other movies. The first Avengers movie with Loki, when they have to take the stone from him, and also cutting into the past, where Captain America was, where Howard Stark is there. Tony has a nice little moment with his father. Captain America then sees Peggy. And, you can kind of see him pondering what would become of his life if he was to have lived that life instead of being frozen in the Arctic for 90 years or whatever, and then waking up and becoming the new Avengers, or starting the new Avengers. So it kind of speeds up a little bit here. I mean, the fighting is just everywhere. The entire screen is filled with actors, CGI, and various explosions. You get Peter Parker coming back as Spider-Man, swinging through. And then it becomes kind of a race to get the Infinity Gauntlet away from Thanos to someone. It doesn't necessarily say exactly, but they're just trying to get it away. So there's a moment where Thanos starts beating up on Captain Marvel, and he can't hurt her, and he has to grab the Power Stone, and just basically knocks the shit out of her, knocks her down. And he thinks he's got the Infinity Gauntlet at that point, but Tony Stark, who had created one himself out of his Iron Man tech, reaches up, touches it, and it's able to morph the stones from that gauntlet into his own Iron Man hand. And you get the kind of moment where Thanos is like, I am inevitable. And then Tony Stark looks at the camera. I am Iron Man. He snaps his fingers, boom, Thanos and the rest of the people disappear. But unfortunately, Tony has give his last quip at this point, and he dies due to the power of the Infinity Stones and being able to use it. It was one of those deaths that it does seem to be permanent in terms of the MCU, along with the sacrifice that Black Widow has to make in retrieving the Soul Stone. But you do see it, and it is kind of a tearjerker in a little bit, because Tony Stark has been around since the first Iron Man back in, I believe, 2008, 2009, something like that. And he's really been the character that the entire MCU has really flowed through, other than Samuel L. Jackson being Nick Fury and just popping up randomly in all the movies. The movies were all kind of revolved around the world of Tony Stark and what was created through him with the first Iron Man film. And it ends with him having a funeral for him, and then, of course, Captain America gets sent back in time to take the Infinity Stones back to their appropriate timeline. That way it would erase the parallel timelines that are created, leaving one hopefully complete timeline where Thanos didn't win and all of our heroes are safe, except Tony Stark and except Black Widow. Of course, Paul Bettany's vision is not there anymore. Because he was given life by the Mind Stone, I think is which one it was. Because he was given life, because from that, once Thanos stole it, he no longer exists. The film was decent. Like I said, it is long. It's 3 hours and some change, and it plays like a best hit album. It's not something that really keeps your attention span so much, because it is just very high-paced, up and down, explosion, fight. A couple cute little jokes. Ant-Man, Paul Rudd gets his taco knocked down when some people fly up in a ship. Hulk walks by, looks at him, sees his taco with all of its toppings on the ground, reaches into his bag and hands him a new taco. And it's cute. It's kind of what's expected from the MCU at this point, but it does kind of put the whole MCU in a bind, because all of the movies up to this point was building around the characters that are here, and now a lot of the actors' contracts are expired, and of course with Robert Downey Jr., the amount of money that they would have to pay him to come back based upon based upon razors and such in his typical contract, he's really not affordable to have there anymore, along with a lot of the other actors who are nearing the end of their contracts. Thor goes off, joins the Guardians of the Galaxy, looking for kind of a join up or link up between the two of those, which will probably be maybe Chris Hemsworth's last film in the MCU. And then Chris Evans, his contract appears to be up as well, because he returns as an older man. He did end up staying in the past with Peggy, made a life with her, and then shows up and passes his shield to Falcon, saying, you're the next Captain America. You're going to kind of carry on the Avengers, from this point forward. It's a decent movie. If you've spent the time watching the other MCU movies, you definitely have to see this one, because it is a chapter, or it is the final chapter in that saga, and it kind of ties up most of the loose threads that were left out there and brings it all to kind of a close. If you don't like Marvel movies, or if you don't like the superhero genres, I wouldn't recommend this, because it does just beat you over the head with the amount of CGI and just mindless action that's going on. The film doesn't have a lot of character development or any kind of special moments like that. It is really from start to finish just a theme park ride with your big cliffs, your drops off, your quick loops, and things like that power it through. But there is some decent special effects that are put in. But again, it is all CGI, and you can kind of see in the background that it doesn't necessarily blend as well, especially if you're not watching it on something with, if you're not watching it in a room that's really dark with the appropriate settings on your TV, it'll look a little bit muted and doesn't really look real. At least it did not to me. It appeared more fake, with just people performing or acting in a green screen environment, and then all of the stuff added in post. Like I said, I would recommend it if you like the Marvel MCU. If you don't like it, then don't watch this. But because, a lot of people invested time into the superhero movies up until this point, you have to watch it to see the closure, because it is a closing of Robert Downey Jr.'s arc in the MCU. And I do believe it'll be hard for them to bring him back in any capacity, because it gave him a successful exit in terms of him sacrificing himself to save his friends and his family, Pepper Potts and his daughter that he ended up having. Other than that, thank you.